Good morning again, Green Spring. Today we will learn about Dr. Elaine Sorsensen's patio garden and her Festival of Lights. She's joined by Elke and Frykman. They lead a new group who will be responsible for the Festival of Lights, or Winterfest, that you have enjoyed for many years. Now, Dr. Sorsensen, I've enjoyed your patio garden and lights for several years, and I'm anxious to learn about how you came to have these two Green Spring attractions. And you are that Dr. Sorsensen, aren't you?
Well, thank you for that question. I'll answer that a little later. First of all, now, we have to go back to the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Now, it all started in 1993. I was living with my husband in a CCRC in California, and it was called Eschaton. But I also was visiting here with my daughter in Virginia, and so I heard about Green Spring. So in 1995, my husband and I got on the mailing list because we heard something was going to be coming into Virginia. Well, I then called and asked about what's available at Green Spring, and I said, I live in California, and over the years, my husband and I have developed a garden outside of our on our patio. So where we lived before was a full-service program, and it had a lot of cottages and low-rise apartments. And we were very interested in the concept of fee-for-service at Green Spring.
Now, did you have an apartment, or did you have a cottage?
We had a ground floor apartment.
Okay, so similar to what we have here.
Yes, right.
Okay.
And so at that time, Susan Domenico said to me, well, what are you looking for? And I said, well, Susan, this is the kind of garden that we have, and you see a picture of it now. And I said, I would like to have something like that space, because by the time I called her, my husband had died, and I was really interested. I said, I need to garden. It's good exercise. It's food for the soul, and it just will keep me occupied. And she said, well, we have something that's not quite as large as you wanted, but it's the place for you. And I said, okay, I'll come and take a look at it. All right, so I arrived here, and this was now in 2001. And when I arrived here, this is what I saw. As you can see at the top, there is a lot of construction going on. And then you can't see too much, but in this middle picture, that's where the bridge is now between Village Square and Connor Terrace. And I could look down, right down in the bottom. I could see in the very end here was where my patio was going to be. And when I looked over the fence, she said, you can go to the fence. And I looked over the fence, and if you'll notice, that's where now John St. Louis has put the nature trail. There was nothing there. Oh. And I could see the walkway that's at the bottom, and I could even see across, if you could look way, way down, you could see the creek. In those days, you could see that far. My son-in-law said, oh, your property is worth much more. You have a water view.
So you didn't have a fence then?
So the fence was there, but
oh, it was.
Yeah, but across it was nothing, as you could see.
But you could see that your limitation would be the fence.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And so then, but in fact, it was interesting because they were really, marketing was very interested in my going to the fence, because it was so, as you can see, there was nothing there but construction debris. And in fact, what they did was to build out a level area, and they created a space there so that I could do some more gardening and go to the fence. Now, in the early days, the garden was very small. I mean, it wasn't very, and it just had pictures, as you can see. I'm looking for the picture, but it was, it just started out with a few things to see. You can see here now the fence is there, and there's nothing beyond it. I just put some things out, just a few things to look at. In the beginning, there was nothing out there either. And again, you can see, looking across the fence, there was just very little. Okay, but then, little by little, we developed a few more things. Oops, okay. And the garden started to enlarge. And It took a couple of years for me to really get into the habit. And my family in those days was helping a lot. You know, the grandkids were little, and they really liked to come down and do a lot of that kind of work.
What about the grounds personnel? Did they help too?
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you asked that, because along with coming here, I thank you for reminding me. It was not only marketing that was interested in that being developed, but I was assisted by everybody in general services. I mean, Joe, Merrick, Pam, Connie, Jim. The arrangement was that they would provide support, heavy lifting. I would pay for everything. So I would go on the truck with him. For example, with Claude, he'd go to Merrifield's to buy some plants, and I would pick out what I wanted, and I would pay for it, but he would put it on the truck, and then he'd bring it here, and even Joe Merrick would bring it down the hill, said, oh, you can't carry those stepping stones, you know. Or Jim from transportation would take me over to Home Depot, and I'd call him in an hour and say, come and get me, and he'd pile everything into the truck, and then, you know. So it was a partnership. And
now, Elaine, was your husband with you?
No, he had died.
He had passed on. Okay.
So let's say when I came here alone.
So you're doing this by yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
But I had my family, my daughter and her husband, and my 2 grandchildren.
Okay.
So over the years, and then I'm going to show you, eventually, not only did we have the garden, but we had the garden in the snow. I couldn't get over, coming from California, I was really interested in snow.
Where were you in California?
In Carmichael, right outside Sacramento.
Oh, well, you had snow in Sacramento, didn't you?
Not much, not to speak of. No, really not. I mean, I grew up in Wisconsin, so I mean, snow
so you
was
knew
not,
snow.
I mean,
so this wasn't new to you.
I knew what 40 below zero was like. So, but
we don't want to know.
But I was amazed that the first time we had that much snow here in Green Stream. So, but there really was a partnership, and I have pictures of dedicating the first garden, and even Craig from Dining Services provided some treats for us, you know, and so it was really such a very good feeling of working together as a team. All right, now I'm going to say, where am I now? I'm up to the fact that those were the gardens from the past. Now, then things got to, in the last few years, it got a little more involved, and you can see, I did a class for the intermissions group, I do every year, teach them about the flowers in the garden and invite them then to come to the patio for cookies and lemonade and wander through and try to identify the plants. So if you were walking down the sidewalk from outside the Aquatink room, this is the view that you would see coming up, and you can see now we're on both sides of the sidewalk with the garden.
So we can get to that sidewalk from the Aquatink room.
Yes,
or there's
also from the roundabout, there's a sidewalk outside, steps outside.
Okay.
You go down the steps.
Okay.
And there's a bench by the gate to the nature trail. People sometimes will sit on the bench and just look at things. And families like to bring their kids down to look at the flowers, because along with the flowers, I try to have other things that are of interest. Little birds doing the.
So you welcome people to come down and look at your garden.
You bet. And so then, here's one of the plants that I talk about, and this is what they call an encore azalea. That azalea will bloom not only in the spring, but again in the autumn.
Oh, is that right?
It is just remarkable, and that's a spring flower. And then we also have the hydrangeas that bloom, and you can see that those. So I'm going to show you a lot of the flowers right now in the garden. And this is another one of the, this is a tree azalea. And look how big that one goes. And when I first started, though, it was about 3 feet tall. Now it's about 6 feet tall. And in addition to that, now here is a special one. This shows you some of the sun patience and a sculpture. You can't really see it, but there's a little, can you see the arrow pointing to it? Elke, tell us, what is that sculpture?
Yeah, it's dark in this photo. When you go down there and visit the plants and everything in the garden, it's not quite as dark. It is a 3-foot metal sculpture of a cocopelli. You know, when we were in our house, we collected all kinds of art from the Southwest Native Americans, and Eva took a particular liking into the cocopellis. I made a few ones in glass, but then when we sold the house and moved here, it would have been very hard to part with this one. we just loved it. And then I ended up in Connor Terrace, and I look out the window, and I'm like, ooh, look at that garden. And Elaine has other pieces of artwork and craft there. So I asked you if I could add it to the display.
So
and it's
you don't
wonderful.
have a patio?
I have a balcony, but I don't want, I want to sit on the balcony, not. Plus, it's nice, when people come and visit, everybody can enjoy it.
Yes,
Oh, absolutely,
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Well, then also in summer, we have, here are some summer impatiens in the garden. And here's one I brought from California, which is a mandevilla vine. And that one in California grows like a weed. But here it's just, you have to, I'm trying to overwinter it this time. I read something on the internet that if you're really careful, you can overwinter this in Virginia by keeping it inside in the dark. So stay tuned. If I'm around in spring, ask me if it's growing.
So you bring it into your apartment?
I brought it. It's inside, right inside the door. Out, on the terrace level. There's a lobby outside that internet store, and it's sitting right there in front of that
And
window.
it's still living, and it's still.
It's dormant now. It's covered.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to see. It's first time I used to just replace it, but they're pretty expensive. So I'm okay. And then here's another example of some of the sculpture in the garden.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things now, the next thing I'm going to show you is some color late in the summer. And what really made a difference for me in the garden was a few years ago, Home Depot funded some research at the Texas Arboretum. And they were interested in working with impatiens, which everybody loves in the shade. Impatiens were growing. Well, so they worked and worked and worked. They now have developed what they call sun patiens, and those are some of what you see there. And they grow not only in the shade, but in the sun. And not only they developed something, not only the low-growing ones, but they developed a variety of sturdy ones that will grow 14 inches tall. When I discovered those, that's what you see the pictures of, or did you see the pictures of? Those were still blooming in October, when the frost came. So that really made gardening a pleasure. But now I'll tell you one thing. This year, when I was just coming back from the hospital, I had ordered all my summer things from Knowles. Well, lo and behold, they arrived, and I came back from the hospital, and I looked at 100 plants out there, and I thought, what am I going to do with those 100 plants? But I was lucky enough, I just said to General Services, you've got to help me save my plants. I need a work order, I need somebody, and they did, and they saved all those plants. Okay, then another one that kids like to look at is this one called the giant coleus. That one, as you can see, loves the sun. It's up against the house, and it loves the sun, and it grows to be 5 feet tall. So now here's another.
And that's an annual.
That's an annual.
Yeah, something you plant every year.
Most of these now, I have those switched from a lot of. I used to plant in the ground. Now I plant in planters.
Oh.
And I've switched from so many annuals, except the sun patients, which are wonderful. And I have a lot of perennials, like the azaleas and the hydrangeas and things like that. And so here is another view, and this is starting to be fall here in the garden. And then this is, if you're lucky, you even get to see the leaves in the fall. And then not only did we have spring, summer, and fall, but as you know, there comes winter. So first, it started out with my family. Winter started out to be really just kind of a little bit of activity, a little color around outside the patio and going to the fence. And people.
How did you come about getting these lights?
Well, they were just trees. I mean, it was just you go into the markets and you see what's out there, and
So
it-
these are separate trees. They're not growing. You
No, see, they're forms. They're tree forms, and you just put your lights on them.
Yeah.
And you know, you just if you during the holiday season, you can go to any of the large places, and you can just spend your money like crazy. And so,
But the
Just
point
what
is,
they want.
the trees, are they always there, or
no, they're
artificial?
forms. They're
Okay,
forms, and
okay.
you have. And in fact, one of the arrangements that I made that we made early on was that since I had a lot of equipment and things, tools and whatever, I was given 2 courtesy storage areas where I could store these things from one season to the other. But this is also the first season, one of the first seasons there in winter. You can see the winter lights in one of those early seasons.
Do you remember when that was?
That must have been 10 years ago.
That didn't.
Yeah, that was early on. And I was again, I'm always amazed at the beauty of nature. I'm so thrilled that I am where I am because it really is important to me. But then this is a picture of 2016. It grew, as you can see. The lights display was larger, and you can see it from the fence, from the bridge, and people like to look at it. Well, unfortunately, right after that, it came in 2019 is what I call the crisis, because due to an unfortunate miscommunication related to the creation of the treasure chest down on the terrace level, the contents of the 2 courtesy bins disappeared. I'm just going to read this now because it's going to take me just a minute to do this.
So those courtesy bins were in the area that the treasure chest was
Yes,
going
right.
And therefore, they were trying to clear everything out.
And they contain garden tools, garden hose, carts, lights, electrical cords, timers, tree forms, and there were thousands of dollars of supplies that had accumulated over the years. As I say, it grew every year. Grandkids would add one more thing, and so it got bigger and bigger. But the unfortunate thing is, it all disappeared, and so it was like, well, okay, I guess that's the end of an era that was meant to be. But the residents really missed it, and so after a lot of discussion and hard work about everybody, including the resident council, who then talked to administration, administration did agree that they would replace those materials. Well, this is important to realize because up until this time, the garden and all the activities, through the seasons, that was a gift from me. Well, it was a gift to myself, really, because that's important to me. But it was a gift from me and my family to Green Spring. And I abided by that that the expenses would be mine. Well, I said, okay, so now we come to replacing all of this. Well, they even cost more than it did as we were accumulating it over the years. So it's a big investment. So at that time, we had a lot of discussions, and I had agreed that, okay, we would do it, but now it would become Green Springs event.
Oh.
Because they had invested lots of money in replacing all of these things, and then didn't say, what was I going to do with all of that? So fortunately, we were able, because they were doing that this year, to have what we call the 18th Annual Festival of Lights.
So Green Spring has paid the money to buy these new.
Yeah, they have, and they were
technically
they were mine because they were replacing what was lost.
But you have.
But what I did was I have gifted it back to them. I have said I am no longer interested. I have no claim on this. I'm gifting this back to you, and that then resulted in the creation of what I'm introducing to you all today, which is the 2020 Community Resources Service Group called Winterfest. And Winterfest is a group of very dedicated individuals. We have about 10 or 12 this year that made it possible to have the Winter Festival of Lights. And the purpose of this group, it's now called Winterfest, is it is a team of volunteers who carry on the long-standing Green Spring Village Winter Festival of Lights tradition. But what's different now is that the group will be providing all of the manpower, the efforts, the planning, and whatever, but the expenses then will be, it's Green Springs property. And so I'm happy to introduce to you, as I put up a picture of this year's lights. I'm so happy to introduce to you the leader of Winterfest, Rick Frykman, and the co-leader, Elke Martin.
Hello, Elaine. Yes.
Now, Rick, what is your interest in this?
We are new to Green Spring.
Yeah.
We moved in late June. Never seen the lights, but the infectious spirit that was around this festival rapidly grabbed a hold of us. And
Well, where do you live in Green Spring?
we live in Connor Terrace.
Okay.
And you did hear
And probably one of the few apartments that really can't see the lights without leaning out a window. But we see them all the time as we walk by,
Sure. Yeah.
and it's hard not to be willing to help someone like Elaine, who the spirit and the
Brett twists his
dedication
arm.
Yeah.
and the group that
Yeah.
that appeared and without any formal creation, but just evolved, and
That's
it's
right.
a
These
great group of
just
people.
came to help after
Yeah.
they heard about the problem. It was really wonderful.
Well,
But you also heard about the lights, didn't you? When you
When we moved in, as we're walking across the
Before.
bridge to be shown apartments by the sales team, they pointed down and said, "Oh, in the winter, down at the end of the sidewalk there are these beautiful lights at Christmas and winter holidays." So, yeah, we knew about them, but we hadn't seen them.
Well, have you gardened a lot in the past? I mean,
We were gardeners. We loved to do that,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things we gave up because we don't have a patio
Yeah.
so we enjoy seeing what's out there, and just glad to participate in can carry on this festival of lights.
And
well,
especially
you are
since-
going to get a garden plot, though.
We are thinking about it.
No, in the meantime, he can come down and pull my weeds.
Yes.
There you go. That's a big part of it. Isn't
Yes.
It?
And the nice thing, I think, is that we have somebody who's brand new, and then we have Elke, who was a staff person here and who has watched the growth of all of this, and so we have a wonderful melding of
absolutely.
of wonderful ideas. And Elke, you walk by the garden too. You know.
I walk by the garden often because I'm on the third floor in Connor Terrace, and so when I want to walk on the nature trail, which I do as long as the weather's okay, pretty much every day, I walk by Elaine's garden, and now our project in the winter all the time. So I enjoy that a lot. I have a garden plot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then
you
I
say
have
you
my
walk
balcony.
the nature trail all the way
Yeah.
around?
Well, depends on what else is going on in my
Yeah.
life. I like to go all the way around. I don't always have the time.
Sometimes you
but-
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you describe it just a little bit?
The nature trail?
Yeah.
Well, you need your key to get out of the gate here.
Oh, you have to use the key to get out?
Yeah, you have to get the key. You have to have the key to
The
open the
outdoor key.
gate.
The
To get
outdoor
out.
Each
key.
way.
And it's which key is it?
The outdoor
the
key.
general door key that we all
Okay,
have.
the big key,
Yeah,
huh?
the big.
The big key.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you walk down a few steps on the gravel path and you come to the asphalt path. If you turn left, you will walk along the creek all the way till the highway.
Yeah. And this gate is behind Connor Terrace?
It's right by the garden where the
Okay.
lights end pretty much. There's a bench, like Elaine said, where people can sit, and there's the gate
All right.
in the big fence. Yeah.
Now I
And if
need-
you turn right, if you come down the gravel path and turn right, you end up on the little street that leads you to the front gate. So you can do a loop that way, and then maybe go through the front gate, what I sometimes do, and then go the nature trail inside up there, and end up by the pond and walk around the pond and come up to the gardens and then loop around that
Well,
way.
that was just a little diversion, but when you mentioned nature trail, I'm sure that many people don't know about the nature trail.
It's a wonderful way to be in nature within a few steps outside
Well,
of
let's
Green Springs.
let's get back now to our group.
Well, now,
Yes.
so now let me answer your question. You asked me if I am.
Are
the
you
reason
that, Dr. Sorsensen? Yeah?
I'm so grateful for this opportunity to tell this history because there were so many rumors. And for example, one rumor was that Dr. Sorsensen had sued Green Spring and won. Well, where did that come from? And another, well, the reason they say to me, are you that Dr. Sorsensen, is there was one of the meetings in the theater where they were meeting with the team, the management team, and somebody said, well, there are so many lovely lights down there, but why aren't there any on the door? And Lynn Keefe said, but those are Dr. Sorsensen's lights. And so from that time on, people were saying to me on the elevator when are you Dr. Sorsensen? Or meet me in the hall, are you Dr. Sorsensen? Well, yes, I am that Dr. Sorsensen, but they're not my lights.
Not
I
anymore.
want everybody to know they are now Green Springs lights, and they will be maintained by this wonderful Winterfest team.
Yeah. Well,
Could I add something? Please?
Sure.
When you talked about volunteers that we have with our group, it's not just residents. I just want people to know, some residents bring their grandkids, some bring friends, whatever. Anybody who's interested in keeping this beautiful tradition alive can join us.
so you do have some of your grandkids involved?
Oh, yes. Oh,
I
yes.
thought they might be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
The heavy lifting.
yeah, and some of the
They're
stuff
pretty
that you
good,
don't want to do.
good-sized people now, aren't they? They're all adults.
Now, that's the problem. And
That's the problem
well,
with
the
kids.
problem is they live in Wisconsin and in Atlanta, Georgia, and Seattle, Washington.
They don't live here.
No.
Oh, okay.
But they come of holidays, which is always nice.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Do we have anything else?
We do have the Winterfest committee, a group of volunteers,
Okay.
and we're not going to let Dr. Sorsensen step totally away. She's still the center of where all this would happen, so she's going to be involved in helping put
I'm very
things up.
good at pointing, if you notice that.
So we do have an official group, Winterfest group.
Yes.
Yes.
You're the leader and a co-leader.
And anybody
it's
can-
not in the community resources pamphlet yet because it's new,
Yeah.
but it will
Brand
be
new.
the
That's
next time.
right.
So
It
it's one
will
of the
be in the
regular group.
2020.
And this is an example of people forming groups, that have an interest that didn't exist before you decided.
And anybody can
Right.
come and join them.
Yeah.
Anybody can come and help.
And I'm sure you can use help, especially in the winter when you have to set it up and have to take it down.
Well, and that's the thing, they're taking it down. And I'm still negotiating about the storage for that because, again, space is tight around here.
Yeah.
So the trees may stay up for quite a while this year. Who knows?
Would they stay lighted?
No, I don't. We
could,
have.
Well, we may have to change the times, once the days get longer, you don't want them lit at 5 o'clock.
No, and
Okay.
I think that the beginning of February is probably time enough to turn them off.
Yeah, we talked about Valentine's
Yeah.
Day maybe, right,
Well,
around that.
Yeah,
We'll see.
So we'll
Okay,
see.
okay. But then you need help taking them down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They have to be stored. Even though they're
absolutely.
sturdy, they just wouldn't
They're
last.
not year-round.
No, so thank you again for letting us tell you all about the history. I think it's important to know that there really are a lot of reasons why a lot of things happen.
And thank you very much because, all the residents who walk the bridge can look down and see your garden. And of course, right now it's winter, but you see the trees still lighted.
And they do. People do come and sit and talk
yeah.
about it and enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
And they can walk down the sidewalk and see
Yeah.
firsthand, get up close and see
That's
the
right.
azaleas or the whatever flowers you have.
Yeah.
That tree azalea sounds like it might be a very nice one. All right, well, thank you all very much for coming.